Hi, we're living in some of the most difficult times in our recent history, for many of us, even in our lifetimes, as we have all the political turmoil of tariffs and back and forth economic war, I guess it's fair to call it right now. And so, as Christian people, we live as part of the world in this anxious and anxiety-ridden times. And I suggest to you that turning to the church, turning to the Gospels is a helpful thing to do in the midst of all this, as we know that God always promises and keeps his promises under promises and over delivers, even although his promises are extremely solid. So I commend to you even this week's gospel. And, we're moving through Lent. We're getting close to the end of it. We shift for this week from Luke's gospel to John's gospel, and we hear about things that are happening 6 days before the Passover. Jesus coming into Bethany, into the home of Lazarus, who he had raised from the dead. So he's got the two sisters, Martha and Mary, around the table, and he's got Lazarus around the table. And I think we can only begin to imagine what it might have felt like to have this man, Jesus, in their home as they had witnessed him raise Lazarus from the dead, this amazing and incredible, incomprehensible, miraculous experience. And so there's different responses to it. Mary immediately pulls out the most costly perfume you can find at nard, it's called, and begins to wipe his feet and even with his hair, with her hair. So you can imagine a very intimate and close encounter. You can imagine the beauty of it and Mary's sort of devotion to Jesus and her unspoken knowledge of who he is and what he's capable of and about. And then of course we have resistance, like so many good things in the world, so many times when God takes action, there's the critics, and Judas is the head critic in this case. And we have to hold to one side the fact that we know what's coming for Judas. And that's hard to do because it's pretty solid stuff that we know about this guy. So he is worried about the money. He's worried about the fact that Mary's devoted probably a year's salary to this perfume that she's just anointing. And I mean, to understand the depth of Mary's knowledge of what she was doing, this is preparing Jesus for the inevitable death. She's probably the only one in the circle of people around Jesus that knows and hears and understands that Jesus is moving towards his death. And as Christian people, we can't have Easter Sunday and the resurrection without living through the Good Friday. And it's the same in our world. We might be living through some Good Friday moments right now and looking at how horrible things are, and we hear it on the news, and we might experience it in personal life. And it could be that it's nothing to do with politics or tariffs. It might be a personal medical diagnosis or all sorts of different things. But what we do know is Jesus is there, and that if we worship Jesus with all of our hearts and our souls and our minds and treat our neighbors accordingly, that God's promises will be valid for us and for our families and for the future, for our grandchildren, for all that may follow us. So praise be to God. We have worship on Sunday. We live in a country where we're free to worship and free to gather. And that is an amazing gift. And we're happy to be able to worship at 9:15 at St. Mary, sorry, 9 o'clock at St. Mary's, 11:15 at St. Stephen's. So do join us this Sunday, and it would be wonderful to see you. And whatever God's up to in your life, travel with God and know that you're loved.